Extra depth on a quest for justice and resolution. 3 decades ago, El Paso was gripped with fear as a suspected serial killer stalked the streets. In the fall of 1987, the bodies of 6 teenage girls and young women were found buried in this desert area of northeast El Paso. They had all gone missing earlier that year. David Leonard Wood was convicted and sentenced to death for the crimes. He was dubbed the Desert Killer, and he is still alive. On the last day of school, 15-year-old Desiree Wheatley vanished. Her mother, Marcia Fulton, remembers their final interaction. She was dropping her off near Charles Middle School in northeast El Paso. It was June 2nd, 1987.
So she gets out and she starts walking, she turns around and she says, "Thanks, Mom, I love you." And I said, "I love you too." And those were the last words we spoke to each other.
Desiree didn't return home when her 10 p.m. extended curfew rolled around.
When I got home at 2 a.m., my mom met me at the door. And she said, "Desi hasn't come home yet." When that happened, the first thing I thought was, this is not right.
Fulton reported her daughter missing. Weeks went by and no sign of her. 3 months later, in September, utility workers scoping out a stretch of land in the desert came across a partially decomposed body buried in a shallow grave. Police found a second body nearby. They were identified as 20-year-old Karen Baker and 24-year-old Maria Janet Casio.
Once they found those two, everything changed. They gave me a different detective on my case, and everything. So, I mean, it was like all of a sudden they woke up and said, "Oh, we have a problem here."
Graves number 3 and 4 were found October 20th. One held the remains of 14-year-old Dawn Smith. The other contained Desiree's skeletal remains. Fulton recognized her daughter's clothing, including a T-shirt she told her mom she intended to cover with her classmates' signatures.
I promised Desi at her gravesite, I will find out who did this, and they will be prosecuted. That was a promise, and I want to keep that promise.
Retired El Paso police detective John Guerrero wanted to help Fulton keep that promise. He talked to the friends hanging out with Desiree the night she didn't come home.
One of the kids tells us, "I saw this guy Skeeter in the store." And he says, "I walk out of the store and we all say goodbye. And I didn't see him." And he says, "Desiree goes north and these kids go south." And he says, "I turned around and I looked to say goodbye to Desiree and I see her getting into the truck with Skeeter. And then they take off." And he said, "That's the last time I saw her. I've never seen her since then."
Guerrero managed to put a real name and face to Skeeter. David Leonard Wood, a man recently released from prison after serving 7 years of a 20-year sentence for raping 2 young teens, and who lived across from Charles Middle School where Desiree attended. The community remained alarmed as 2 more bodies, victims 5 and 6, were found in the desert. They belonged to 17-year-old Angelica Frausto and 23-year-old Ivy Williams. Wood went to trial accused of capital murder in the 6 deaths and was convicted and sentenced to death. But 33 years have passed since the first graves were found, and Wood remains on death row, maintaining his innocence. Guerrero is convinced of Wood's guilt.
No doubt that he did. There's no doubt in my mind he did.
The mother of one of the youngest victims wants Wood held accountable.
People want to say, "Well, no, you just want revenge." No, I want justice. It's in this country, capital murder times 6 is the death penalty.
In this latest episode of Borderland Crimes, David Leonard Wood, the Desert Killer, the links police used to connect the cases other than where the bodies were found, how one mother managed to bring attention to the disappearances of women written off as troubled members of society, and the ongoing legal fight by the man who insists he didn't do it. Deaths in the Desert, a serial killer's personal graveyard. Download the podcast on kvia.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Stephanie Valle, ABC 7.